Yes.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I have amazing connections.
Where do you get all this connection anyways?
He gets to see all the people that I invite here, and he's loving my friends.
Well, I'm truly honored to be in this conversation. And my husband said, why'd she pick you?
Booger.
No, he was serious. It's a valid question.
Sure it is. Are you wondering the same?
Sort of.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I wanted you to come and sit and share this with me because I feel like we understand each other well. Mm-hmm. And we have good communication. We're kind of running on the same vibration, maybe, something like that. And I think that you're very smart, and I like the way you think about things. So I want to know earnestly what you think about these questions. I really want to know what your brain thinks about those things. And when I talk to people about these things, it helps me understand how I feel about these things. Because that's what I use my community for. They're my teachers and my boundaries and my reflections. And I thought it would be very interesting to share this discussion with you. And I thought it would be interesting enough that even other people would like to hear it. So that's why.
Oh, well, I'm honored. Yeah, I didn't really spend a lot of time on the questions except for the very first one for quite a while. And then this morning I had coffee in the rocking chair with the dogs. And
you were thinking?
I was thinking and just sort of jotted a few things down because I don't want to lose track.
Yeah.
My world as a trainer and my world is.
Let's pause right there for a second.
Yes.
Because I'm so glad you're here, Lynn. I'm so glad you're here. This is my friend Lynn Anderson. Are we good to roll, Subhan? Yeah. Thank you very much. And by way of introduction, I want to ask you what you like to do for fun. Because you're so talented. I can tell you guys right now, she paints, she sings, she does art, she creates tools for people. She creates leadership programs. She creates onboarding, offboarding program. Like, she's just so talented. So when it's for fun, what do you like to do?
Ooh, that's really hard. If I were to pick the one thing that I do for fun, it's have people over and gather and feed them.
Nice.
And sort of nurture that. Years and years and years ago, I went to a leadership program called One World Learning, and it was ropes courses, and, you hung from the trees and, trust falls. And you did a personal mission statement. And my personal mission statement at the time, we owned a bed and breakfast, and we were kind of taking care of the world. And I really, to sort of paraphrase my personal mission statement, is to nurture development and take care of others.
Very
And
nice.
That's what I saw my mom do. And that's what I saw my father do. And so I think I just kind of came into it naturally.
Isn't that amazing? How
I still
wonderful
do that.
for you.
I still do that.
I love that. I love the way that you talked about that. Thank you for sharing that. Do you want to just say a little bit about what you do professionally?
Sure. I've had lots of careers because I have, as I said, the attention span of a 5-year-old on coffee and sugar. So I go from a lot of things, but currently I am the Assistant Vice President of Professional Development for large credit union in the state of Maine. I don't know if I can say where that is. And
we just won't. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it has been, I landed that job when I was 62. I got let go from my previous position where I had been for 10 years, which sort of broke my heart.
I bet it did.
But my mother always used to say, everything has a purpose.
Sure.
And I'm in a really great place. I love the company. I've been there almost 6 years. And there was a lot of fear at my age of like, what am I going to do? Who is going to hire me?
Yeah.
But
Who would even want me?
The guy who hired me was a year older and was a year ahead of me at Orono. So I felt sort of safe. And plus he'd been married to my second cousin for a while. So, you kind of
practically
connected.
family.
Everybody in Maine is family. So that's what I do. I onboard all new hires. I managed a lot of logistics for other trainers, for different vendors.
Yes. And events.
And events, yes. My previous life I was a caterer for 16 years, owned a bed and breakfast. And so if you want an event organized, you call me.
And landscape design too, right?
Yeah, I did landscaping for 8 years, did municipal work, and we have a massive garden of peonies. We're part of the Peony Society of Maine. And you have to say that like the Peony Society of Maine.
course,
you have
the
to sort of
Peony
you have to
Society.
get your posture
You
up
sit
a
up a
little
little
bit.
straighter.
You do. I'm just,
Well, I was just saying, I think I want to spend a season of painting peonies.
come by.
Oh, I'm going to have, where else would I go? where else would I go?
I have 55 different ones.
Oh, heaven.
They're not all the same.
So part of my desire to sit with you is because I feel like I have so much I can learn from you.
and
that-
I from you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
And you're very generous with your spirit and your sharing. And I just really appreciate that. So where do you see sacrifice in everyday life?
Well, you had given me these questions a little ahead of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I thought about that first one, I really need to go to the second question.
The second, part of that question, which is
How do you define sacrifice?
how do you define sacrifice? Okay, let it rip.
So we had talked about this just briefly before when
Very
we met.
briefly.
Very briefly. And I've sort of stayed on the thought of that. I think of the word sacrifice as very generational. So when I look back
Interesting.
on, you hear we sacrificed during World War II. I'm old enough to not remember World War II, obviously, but family. My mother-in-law's 96, and of course she
yeah.
lived through the Depression, and she would tell you a very different feeling about sacrifice than I would. Sacrifice is not in my vocabulary. It's not part of my normal things to think about. So when I think about sacrifice, I sort of look at my mom, and she said, I sacrificed my figure to give birth to you.
Ah.
I sacrificed my career. My mother was a nightclub singer in California.
Wow.
So she sacrificed that
Sure
to
she
have
did.
a
Yeah,
family
yeah.
because of the era that was happening in. And I don't think about anything that I've ever done as a sacrifice.
Interesting.
I think of it as a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I've made choices that have led to other things. And when I think about sacrifice, is it life-changing? So is sacrifice life-changing? Some people don't have a choice. So when you look at what you think about now for sacrifice, and I'm not going to get into politics, but you cannot avoid what's going on in the world. People in Gaza are sacrificing because they have been taken, the choices have been taken away from them. Ukraine, in the United States, losing health care, losing your
Everything.
reproductive
so many
rights,
things. All
so
jobs,
many things.
national parks, so many things. So many
Everything.
things. Yeah.
So when you lose those choices, then you make sacrifices. That is, to me, the definition of sacrifice.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective on that. I'm going to reflect back to you a little bit to help me understand it. But I think I hear your experience around sacrifice has been in that place where it's hardship. It's always kind of related to hardship and often like some kind of a deprivation or like there was an imbalance of power, right? And so the victim ends up making sacrifices. Something like that. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we go into the first part of this question and talk about where you see sacrifice a little bit more in everyday life, the lens of relationship building.
So we're bumping her up to the third question.
Not quite.
So through the lens of relationship,
Yeah. Where do you see sacrifice in everyday life?
that's an interesting question because I think about the relationship that means the most in the world to me is that with my husband.
I'm glad you said that. That's nice.
Well, we've been together 48 years.
Yes.
And married 45.
Wow.
And he is...
Congratulations.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
remarkable. And I've seen you two together and I know you like each other.
We're
That's
kinda-
remarkable.
We're kind of hitched at the hip a lot. We have very similar interests. We're both scuba divers because I don't want him going
Come
down
on,
there by
that's so
myself.
cool.
I got too much fear. So if I'm down there, I know what's going on. But we talk about how we sacrifice in everyday life. And so I look back at our affair, our love affair, our marriage. And if somebody had said to me, well, you sacrificed when he went away to college.
Right.
and
Right. Yes.
You worked 2 jobs.
Someone else might define that as a sacrifice.
They define that as a sacrifice. So what did you sacrifice? So Harry could go to Assumption and get his master's degree. I worked 2 jobs 2 summers in a row. He was gone all summer. And that wasn't a sacrifice. That was a choice. And then you think that's an investment in our future.
Definitely.
So what? I'm pretty resilient.
Yeah.
I had a bigger garden that summer. I had 2 jobs.
You had fun. You learned more things. You didn't suffer in that sacrifice.
That was the summer that I went to the Etna spiritual camp and did the feature story.
That's so
that we talked about.
Yes.
That your mom is a spiritualist. And so if I hadn't had that second job and if I hadn't been by myself, I never would have experienced that. And that
so
opens you up.
When the definition of sacrifice is related to suffering, it's hard to connect that with your life.
I've never suffered.
Because it's not in your story. Not that way. You've had challenges and trials, right? You've had struggles.
I've had loss, but personally.
But you've healed and recovered, and you're incredibly resilient.
Thank you for resilient, because that was the next word. You know, if you have resilience, you can look at all these things very differently.
How do you build resilience? How do you know if you have it? Let's start there.
I took a test.
Is this tell me, I forget the acronym already.
EAP? No, I don't know.
Last year at the employee summit.
The predictive index thing?
Yes, predictive indexing. Was that that test, different test?
No, we have an employee assistance program, and one of the things in it is a resiliency test. And so I thought, I'm going to score myself, and I'm pretty high on resilience.
Nice.
But I grew up in a very stable family, and I never really had to give up anything. I mean, we weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure, but you had what you needed.
And I've been working since I was 12.
Yeah.
You know, I've done a lot of different things.
You know how to take care of yourself, and you're not afraid to try new things.
And if you do fail, well, then you learn. Because I always say in class, when you have a group of people who are terrified because you're speaking a new language at them, which is English, by the way, but it's full of banking acronyms.
Indeed, yes.
Oh, dear. And I say, 2 things. I'm going to assess you, and I really don't care about the score. I really only care about what I need to do better for you. And the second thing is, you're going to make mistakes, and how that's how you're going to learn the best, because we don't really learn from our successes as much as we learn from our failures.
Right.
And so if you keep those 2 things in mind in a classroom, people relax and they allow the learning to happen instead of freaking out.
Yeah, that's a really big deal.
Which is way off what we were talking about.
No, it's not at all. I used to work in eye care. And when you sit in the chair at the eye doctor's office and you get the little thing, right, before they put the dots down and it's up and you're staring at those letters. And people get so anxious about that because they feel like it's a test. Yeah. But it's not. It's a measure.
Yes.
We're just getting a measure on what you can see. But they feel this anxiety to get it right. And it disrupts the quality of the care and the experience because they're so distracted by that idea that they're going to fail.
Yes.
It's so fascinating. So you're able to invite the classroom and give them permission to look at that in a different way. You're very good at reframing and setting your mindset to be on track to what you're pointing at. And I think your personal mission statement is the compass arrow for that. I've been asking people about this stuff and saying, I think it's about values, where we place our value. And if we have a clear understanding of that, which you do, that makes it easy when you make difficult decisions or you have to make a sacrifice to choose to understand that it's not a suffer.
No.
Right. And so it's not that you haven't been pushed and had resistance. It's that you've been successful and resilient. You had tools, whatever, experiences in your upbringing that gave you the ability to do those things. Some of it might just be genetically inclined, you know. I just find that remarkable enough to underline it and say, hey, that's good job. I think way back when you did that personal mission statement, you also were setting yourself up for the future to make these decisions and have an efficient path to your goal. When we're focused on our personal mission statement, whatever it is, right? Yesterday, I said to my friend who was sitting here, sometimes I try to find language to use for non-religious people and religious people to come together on the same ideas. So a religious person might say, you just have to look to Christ. And I would want to say something to someone else who doesn't speak a religious language. What does that mean? How can we translate it to that? And having a clear vision of where you're headed, I think, is the key to having peace and growing through those things.
That's an interesting, having a clear vision on where you're headed is an ambitious thing, because you have to be ultimately true to yourself and sort of let some things happen.
That's hard.
Well, it depends on your self-esteem, and it depends on how successful you have been.
Does an example come to mind as you say that?
Well, I never thought I would be where I am today.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in college and you're trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, and I've always just said, well, whatever comes along, there's going to be something to be gained from that. I've had one job that I had was the worst job in the world for 2 years. I hated every minute of it. But when I got out of it, the phrase that comes to mind is no good deed goes unpunished. I learned a ton in that job. And that led me to the next job where the skills that I learned in the job I hated the most turned out to be the thing that got me the next job.
And did you feel your being shift around that? Like, did you feel more grateful about that job, or did you still feel resentful, or whatever the adjective?
I don't feel resentful. I think that's just negative energy, and that doesn't do you any good. You can't carry all that negativity with you.
Some of us take a much longer time to come to that understanding than you do. And I find that
there's that resilience.
Yes, it's a very cool quality that it comes more naturally to you than it does to a lot of human beings. And I just find that remarkable and wonderful.
Well, it's, I guess, because I didn't have, so here's another thought. I didn't have a preconceived notion of what my life would look like.
Okay.
So
that helps.
It helps a lot, because then you're open to whatever kind of comes through.
Sure.
But also, I didn't sacrifice anything to get to here.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know where this was going.
That's cool.
I just kind of went there.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
I was an island kid. I grew up on an island off the coast of Maine. I never, ever figured, not for the longest time, I didn't think I didn't get to the mainland for a job.
Seriously.
Let alone, grocery shopping. Not that we were that isolated, but
it is a bit, though.
But when we left the island, when we got married, Harry and I met at Orono and got married. When we left, that was a big deal, because I left everything that I knew to be safe and secure, but it was so easy over there. And it was easy to, you could lose your relationship there. You could, you would work really hard for 7 months out of the year, and then you would struggle for 5. And you wouldn't I wouldn't use my education. I wouldn't use anything.
Yep.
So to stay there was a worse hardship than leaving. And that was clear when we got married. It's like, we're out of here.
Yep.
We stayed a year and then we left.
I think when I think of having a clear vision of like the mission statement or my values, or a clear vision of what's ahead, I mean more a clear understanding. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was really difficult, and it took me a long time, and I talked to a lot of people, and I read a lot of books, and the language itself, the vocabulary words, I found debilitating. Like the list, like if you look at a list of vocabulary words that people would use for values, like Brene Brown wrote this exhaustive list, like 250 words or something like that. When I looked at that list, I felt overwhelmed. Like, I can't do this. This is too much. And I spent time, I believed her. I believed people that said you need a clear understanding of your values to be more efficient in your path to your goals and happier and more peaceful, et cetera, et cetera. I believed them, and so I spent some time on it. And I think that I'm at peace with the idea because I can change it if I want to. I think it's like a living document. Like, it's something.
Goals are a living document.
Yeah, and values too. The vocabulary words might shift. Mm-hmm. Maybe the values in general don't really change in the overarching span of things, like your mission statement to nurture and care for those around you. That might not change ever. But there might be aspects of it that shift and evolve over time, or you might add to it.
So when your mission statement is to take care of others and to nurture others, what happens when you need nurturing and caring for?
Yeah.
And so
what does happen?
You sort of, you reach out to a very few limited people that you have develop that trust with. You were talking earlier in the hallway when we were talking about your position as a home health care nurse. You're in a really incredibly intimate situation with somebody that you're essentially a stranger to.
Perfect strangers. And
Perfect
in their
strangers.
home in a really hard time and talking about very personal, private things.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the group of people in my life that I would reach out to is limited to what's on one hand. And not because I don't know them, because I do know them really well. And they will put up with whatever it is I need, and they'll put up with me, and they'll still love me, and they'll still take care of me.
And tell you the truth.
And they'll tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. So how can you tell when someone is good? You can tell when someone is good by
How they treat others.
talk about that some more.
Sure.
Develop that a little bit.
Yeah. Let me just get to that page because I have this great book. So
You're just like me. Look at us with our.
Oh, I know. I have so many of these. This one came
Me too.
from a new vendor that we worked with last week. The book is terrible, but it had paper. So there's a couple of things, how they treat others. And I think if you go out to dinner with people that you've never met before, so you're getting to know another couple or something like that, and the waiter or the server comes up, and you watch how that person is that you don't know, how they treat that server.
You can
It's
learn a
usually a
lot.
pretty good indicator of how they're going to be.
Pretty good meter.
Yep. Because so much comes out in that conversation. Do they respect that person for the job they're doing?
And even when the food comes too, sometimes
yes.
that can be
The
another
whole
revelation.
experience.
Yeah.
The whole experience.
Interesting.
Yeah. So how you treat your server is kind of reflective in how you treat other people. Are you not grateful? I don't use the word grateful very often, but do you show gratitude for things that are everyday, simple things? Do you use your power for good, not evil?
Right. Do you look for opportunities to belittle someone? Like that's using the power imbalance, right?
Do you feel better because you made them feel worse?
Right. And like let's talk about the dining experience and the culture there and why that's a good place to get a meter on a stranger. Because there's like an accepted culture at the table, right? And we're talking about Americans when they go out to eat because it's different in different countries. But there's this expectation, and some people, I think, exploit their power as a consumer of service, right? Like I think and maybe this is a story that many people have heard someone say, but that they put a stack of ones on the corner of the table and they told the waiter, this is what you're working on, and starts taking them away. Like every time something to their displeasure would take the dollar away. So humiliating, so public, so undignified.
It's rude.
It's rude. It's unkind.
It's jerky.
Yeah.
I could use a lot of other language,
Definitely.
but I won't because I don't know what you want me
And
to
so
say.
these people who are working for money, they have a job. They're at their job. Come to your table and offer to bring you food and wait on you. And yes, you're paying for the service, but sometimes people behave as if that waiter.
They're entitled.
Right. And they treat their service staff like second-class citizens, third-class citizens, slaves, something like that.
I've been a waitress many years. I waitressed my way through college.
So that might also be influence on the way that you...
I'm a wicked good guest. That's what
and
that
the way
means.
that you think about people at the table and how they
Sure.
interact with their wait staff.
Sure.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Because you can't really understand what that's like until you've been on both sides.
Sure.
And I, as a caterer, having a catering
Oh, my
company,
word, yes.
I have been treated well because it was my company, but I wouldn't allow anybody to treat my staff any differently. And I'm okay with putting my foot down and saying that's not acceptable behavior.
Let's talk about that for just a second.
Sure.
When you say I'm okay with that, it reminds me that most people are not okay with that. Or most people that I talk to, I feel like say, I don't like conflict. And that's what they're talking about. And I don't think you would call that a conflict. So we're still talking about how you can tell when someone is good. We were specifically referencing at a table at a restaurant and how you can measure some of that, like how you can tell if they're good by how they interact with their wait staff.
How do they use their power?
Right. Power imbalance.
Right. Because they perceive that there is an imbalance and that they are here and the people serving them because they're serving them are
Right.
down here.
Right.
And I will.
Oh, put your foot down. That's what it was.
How do you put your foot down and still maintain any kind of a civilized moment with this person?
I think people are afraid to say something like, hey, your behavior is inappropriate right now. Why?
Well,
what are you doing?
I would just, so what I normally do is I take it the other direction. I am I go overboard a little bit in my kindness towards that server.
Gotcha.
I lead by example.
Yes.
I say
with a little tongue in cheek in it too.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And essentially, if anybody is doing that and they have a modicum of self-awareness, they'll kind of get that they have screwed up.
Hopefully.
Well, some people, and if they don't, and if they're irredeemable, then that's the last time I spend any time with them.
Because I
always tip way more at those moments anyway. Because I want that person, that server, to know that I see you, I get it. This was inexcusable, and that guy's a jerk. Yeah. And we're going to, I hope you're okay. And I'm a good tipper anyway, no matter what. Me too. Yeah. Even if the service is horrible, I know it's not always their fault.
No, it's not always their fault. That was a really good illustration of that, I think. Anything else you want to share about that?
No. My husband said, and I tried not to let his verbiage influence this conversation, but he said character is what you do when no one's looking. And your character, but when people are looking, it's even more evident, I think, because I see stuff all the time that drives me crazy at work or whatever, but I'm not in a position to change a lot of things. And for me, that becomes really problematic.
Me too.
Yes.
So that's something I've worked on over the last few years is when I'm not in charge of a situation and I know that I can benefit the situation by being in charge or influencing what's happening, is when I have to dial into my old mantra, shut up, Emily. Shut up, Emily. Shut up, Emily.
I have the similar one always. Shut up, Lynn. Shut up, Lynn.
Nice.
Shut up, Lynn.
Nice. Because what I've learned over the years, once I get out of my 20s and I was going to therapy and stuff like that, I learned that not only do they not need me to fix everything, also I might still be right, even though they don't need me. And I might be the best one for the job, but that might be irrelevant.
So that goes down. There's a lot of things you just said in that I might be the best one for the job, but how do you know you're the best one for the job? I
usually am.
Well, you've got a great super ego.
Right, we're kind of, I'm good at almost everything I try.
Well, I work hard at being good at what I do.
Too.
I don't have
luck.
I don't have you know what it. But
no, you don't have but it.
Thank you.
You don't. I work really hard and I love to succeed and I love to do well and learn new things.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you want to nurture others, you have to step back and you have to let them take control of something, and you have to trust that they're going to be okay and they're going to learn for that. Yes. So when I have one staff person that works for me and I can do what I'm asking this person to do. Yeah. I can do it without even thinking about it. But how's that person going to grow and improve if I just stand there and tell them what to do every blessed minute of the day?
And what happens to the team when you do that?
Oh, you just fall apart.
Why? Why does it fall apart?
Because you can't be everything to everybody. You can't.
Nope. Even if it's better and faster and blah, 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 what you tell yourself, right? Yes. I've worked on teams where somebody in leadership was that kind of thing. It was like, no, I'll do it. No, I got it. And then on the weekend or something goes wrong and the team is paralyzed because that person is the one who takes care of everything. Right. And that can happen in every aspect of our life.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll self-admit I am a control freak.
Me too.
Yep. I like to be, because I want it to be the best it can possibly be. Yeah. But as I would say, as a caterer, you have a staff and you can't be everything and you can't be there in every minute. And I would explain what I needed and I would say, go for it. And the staff person would interpret what I say and they'd do something completely different than what I asked for. But it was okay.
It's still done and it's still great. And
the only person that knows the difference between what they did and what I wanted is me.
Yes.
The other people around them enjoying whatever it is they did have no idea what my vision was. Right. But that takes a long time to sort of let go of.
When I was a young woman, that was very very difficult for me.
When I was 5, my rank card from school said Lynn's a little bossy, and that has haunted me my whole life.
Yep.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I've been called a complainer. I've been called bossy. Stuff
I've never
like
been
that.
called a complainer.
It was somebody who wasn't ready to think about change. Yeah. You know, sometimes the boat is just sailing right along, just fine, chugging right along. There's no wind, there's no waves. It's just chugging right along, peaceful. And then somebody comes along and says, you know, we could go faster.
Or we could go starboard a little bit.
We could, and watch what would happen. Oh, no. The boat's going just fine. You should have seen how it was 2 years ago. Look at this. It was that kind of a team, right? So that has its problems as well. Yeah, interesting. So you can tell when someone is good by how they treat other people, and you can see how they treat other people when you spend time with them. And you have very clear limits on the social behaviors that you would not spend time with beyond that.
There are some you don't have a choice.
Indeed.
Because you'll be friends with a couple.
Yes.
And you love one person in the
Yes.
couple, and you tolerate another person in the
Right.
couple. And you sort of measure the value of the time you get to spend with the person you like the most. And there is this other phrase, the solution to pollution is dilution.
I'm just going to write that
Okay,
down.
you can write that down.
The
So,
solution
to pollution is dilution.
to pollution.
So if you have a toxic person in the little mix because you have no choice, and when you have an open house or you have a big party, you're always going to get somebody there that wasn't your first choice, but they're going to bring somebody who is your first choice. You have to put up with it. And you kind of, the more the merrier. So the more people you have, the less impact that person's going to have. And they'll gravitate to somebody else that can tolerate them or doesn't really know them.
Yeah.
And so, that's my solution to a lot of things. It's just like fill the room, and I won't have to deal with this. And anybody.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you adapt the setting around you to meet your social needs. That's remarkable. And I think that is a part of resilience that you can learn. I think some people have an innate sense of resilience, but I think it's a skill that could be developed and grown for a lot of people, young people coming out of high school. And
Yeah.
I wrote down the word titrate. The solution to pollution is dilution. Titrate.
You chemist.
This is going to go on a t-shirt. I think I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. I have a Cricut at home. I can make t-shirts. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we've talked a lot, and there's another question. If you're ready to move on to the next
Sure,
question.
I'm ready to move on. We're going a little stream of consciousness here. So
Yes.
So.
What do you wish people would just figure out already?
Oh, this is a good one. That they aren't the only people
Okay.
in the world
I can't wait to hear more about this.
or in a relationship, and that kindness matters.
Okay. That they
There's
aren't
three
the
things.
only people
They aren't the only people.
in the world,
Yep.
in the relationship.
On the planet.
Right. And what else?
That kindness matters.
Yeah. Most people talk about kindness when we talk about this question.
Yep.
Kindness matters.
And whatever their choice is affects everybody or other people. So
I love that. So yesterday my friend said, I don't know if I'll be able to say it the same way, that you're aware that your beingness affects other people's beingness. So I'd love to hear you develop those thoughts a little bit, that they aren't the only people. Can you talk more about that?
sure. I mean, you see that on the road.
That's my favorite example.
Yes.
Driving on the highway.
Driving in town, driving anywhere. Or in the grocery store, they've parked their little giant full carousel with 3 screaming children.
And don't
in the
look
middle.
when they're walking in the parking lot. They just walk.
They just
walk.
Well, they're texting or they're doing something.
Ugh.
So it feels like if there was a little more self-awareness, if we all sort of understood where we are in the world and how, as you say, our being affects other beings. And that just sort of spurs when I'm having a tough time at work. And who doesn't have a tough time at work?
We're humans.
We're humans.
Yes.
And there's a lot of moving parts, and I keep a lot of programs and I keep a lot of plates spinning.
Yes, you do.
And when somebody who I think should be better at their job because they get paid way more than I do, doesn't do their job and it affects my job, I get a little cranky.
Me too.
I mean, I'm Susie Sunshine here today, but in general, I can get fairly frustrated, and I wear my frustration in my posture and in my demeanor and in my movement and my curtness.
I bet I do too.
And so for me and that's been brought to my attention before, and it's like,
by a lovely person who told you the truth.
Those
are hard to find sometimes.
Well, this person is around there all the time. But it's like, you have to stop and think, okay, I'm allowed to feel like that.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to be like that. I am not always Susie Sunshine. I don't always have the answers. But when I have to stop and say, okay, like the other day, I was having such a negative day, and it felt like everything that came out of my mouth was negative. So the next day I came in and I apologized to two people. I said, I am so sorry. This is not fair to you. You do not need to listen to me be negative Nelly all the time. So I'm going to be more positive. And then I said, I'm pretty positive it's going to be another negative day.
I'm positively a grump today.
And that just that tells them that I was aware of what a jerk I was being, and that I get it, and that I'm working towards not being that all the time.
Yeah.
So
also
I'm not the only
models.
person in the room.
No.
So I'm being that person too. I got to be a better person when I do that.
You role modeled for them too. You gave them language, tools, strategy of how to own it when you behave in a way that you wish you hadn't. And that is really important. It's so important that we do this stuff out loud with each other.
Sure.
Because that's how we become resilient. We see resilience and we become resilient.
But when you're in the thick of it, when you're in that moment, it's hard to see yourself.
Yes.
It's when you sort of have a cocktail at 5:30 and you're like, wow, I was awful today.
Jerk today.
And people who love me will forgive that, but they shouldn't have to put up with it. That's not what they came to the party for.
No, but they're happy to occasionally.
Yeah.
Because you do it for them too, I'm sure.
Well, yeah.
I'm sure you do. And I'm sure you're happy to bear burdens with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
what
they
can
probably
I take off your
are
plate?
too.
You can take, yeah. So it's good. So
knowing that you're not the only person in the room, that what you do affects others. You have a bad day, it's affecting other people. There's an opportunity after you behave badly to do something about it. And it could have immeasurable positive impact on the people that you're connecting with, whether it's at work or at home, right? I sometimes have a harder time doing the apology cleanup at home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'd much rather be snarky.
Oh, no.
And sarcastic and kind of avoid thinking about what I might need to change.
I don't.
That's what I do.
Yeah. It's, I have a husband who calls me on things.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't, not that he's in control.
No.
Forbid.
I know what you mean.
He might think he is, but I know differently.
But that's really not important.
No.
No.
But if I'm snarky and I'm a bitch to him, then that's disrespecting him because he has a hard day too.
Yes. We at my house, we have we call it the easy button, like the old commercial. Remember the Staples? Was it Staples?
Yes.
That was easy, right? That button. That's what I call it. But what it means is the default position, the default switch is I love you and you love me, and we would not hurt each other on purpose. Right. So if we're feeling hurt, there's something else going on, we can talk about it. So we sort of negotiated that when we were dating, how we would communicate when we fight. Because we were in our 30s, so we had already had some, this was our second marriage for each of us. But that's why we came to the table wanting to talk about that kind of stuff, as we're a little bit older on our second marriage. But that works for us. How do you tell each other when you're behaving badly? How do you say it to him? How do you receive it? How does he receive it?
Interesting. We don't fight a lot, which people say you don't fight. I'm like, no, we don't fight. We just...
Fighting's overrated. Unless you have great makeup sex, fighting is overrated.
I'm not going to talk about that.
Carry on.
That can be edited out. Yes, we do, but not right because no.
So the question is, when you're home, you and your husband, and one of you is being snarky, whatever, fill in the blank, how does the other How do you call them out? How do you say it? How do you receive it? Where have you had success?
I take the immature route of just shutting up and not talking.
Like
Yes.
that?
Oh, I do.
I'm going to go sit in the dirt.
I'm going to let my mascara flow.
Okay.
No, it's when he's doing something, when I'll say something to him and I need an honest response and he thinks I'm being invasive or that I'm being nosy. I know. I say, I'm not being your mother. I love you. I care about you. I need to know. Well, you don't need to worry. Worrying is my job. So get over it.
Yeah, you don't get to tell me how to feel, but thank you.
But thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to worry, and I'll worry less if I have information.
Yeah.
If you hold information, and it can be health, it can be anything. If you withhold that information, then I will fester, and I'll stew, and I'll worry.
Yeah.
And
And feel disconnected.
exactly.
Yeah.
And those kind of go in fits and spurts, but those are the things I do. I go the immature route. I'm not going to, I'll own that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I'm like, when I get quiet and shut up and don't talk, he knows that we've gone too far.
Yeah.
And then we talk.
Wow.
And those moments last sometimes the length of a car drive.
How
Sometimes
does it change from that to the other?
I think you need to reset all the time.
Okay.
I think you.
What does that mean for you?
Well, it means that you have to like make sure that that person knows that you're right there.
The default button.
Yeah. What's the reset? I'm here. I'm in the moment with you. He has a busy work schedule. He works from home. I have a busy schedule. And so often I feel like we just pass like this for weeks on end.
Oh, yeah.
And when he'll say something to me, the TV will be on or the dogs will be doing something or he'll be making supper or I'll be doing something. And I'm not giving him my full attention. And I find that when I'm not in the moment in any relationship, especially that one, the most important one in my life, if I'm not in the moment, then that's not fair to him. It's not fair to us. And you have to bring yourself back to that moment.
Yeah.
If you don't bring yourself back to that moment, then you just keep fracturing off each other. You just don't go anywhere. So for me, the quiet is kind of a reset. I'm just going to think this through.
Yep.
And he's going to be thinking while I'm thinking. Yep. And then we're going to say, okay, let's just talk this out. And we always end up where we need to be.
Nice. I need to be quiet too, but it's more because I'm really mean.
A mean fighter?
I am a mean arguer.
Oh.
I grew up among some violence. And being a small girl with some violently, I don't know, a tendency to be more violent or aggressive, the young men and older men around me. And so I would be really, really mean. And they wouldn't come near me. They wouldn't come near me. Cruel mean. So as an adult, when I started to become aware of how mean I could be, I wanted to change it. And I actually called my mother. I was reading some book about women and cycles, and it was like a Native American book, something. And I had this like epiphany, and I called my mother and I said, I am so mean. And she goes, I'm surprised you know that about yourself.
Wow.
Which was a really powerful statement. And it helped me to like keep processing in it. And anyways, at some point I came to some conclusion about being afraid and having safety in my home. And I was able to have a therapeutic breakthrough and move through that stuff.
I've never been a mean fighter. I don't ever hit below the belt. I don't.
I only hit below the belt.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in a household of fighting. Yeah. My parents didn't fight. I know that they did fight because every once in a while my mother would say, tell your father I said something, and he'd be sitting in the room. And I'm like, okay. And then my mother didn't talk to me for 6 months one time, which is a whole nother story. And she would say to my dad, tell your daughter.
Oh, my word.
And so that was my mother's sort of passive aggressive.
You did your penance there.
Yes.
Your
but
6 months.
I've always felt like if you start to shred personalities when that's not the issue, that's not fun.
Yeah. And what else is going on?
And that's hard to fix.
You can't undo it. I feel like you can't.
You can't.
You cannot put the cat back in the bag, right?
No, when you've told somebody that they're the village idiot and that they have no
whether it's your children, it's someone that you work with, someone that works for you, someone that brought you food to the table, you cannot undo that.
Stick to behavioral terms. Stick to actions.
Yes. Yeah.
Stick to actions.
Yeah. And we'll talk about more conflict next time. I'm going to make a note.
Talking about conflict.
Yes, we are. What we were just talking about was conflict at home and resolution, peaceful resolution, right? I asked you, how do you police each other in your behavior? Mm-hmm. That's conflict. Mm-hmm. And this is all like strategies for peaceful conflict resolution. I want to help people understand we can employ the exact same strategies at home, at work, at school. It doesn't matter where you are because they're humans. Mm-hmm. Humans are everywhere.
They are.
Just everywhere. So annoying. Everywhere. So we're talking about what do you wish people would just figure out already, mm-hmm. which led us into a discussion about relationships at home and how we talk to each other and that sort of thing. And you also, there's two other parts, kindness matters and about how your beings affect other beings. But that sort of looped into the beginning part of you're not the only person in the room, right? I feel like we kind of touched on that a little mm-hmm. bit. So kindness matters. I want to hear you talk about a little bit.
Why kindness matters?
Mm-hmm. Or why you answered the question that way. I know why kindness matters. Talk about why the question is, what do you wish people would just figure out already? Kindness matters.
Well, there's so much unkindness right now.
Show me your evidence. How do you know?
Oh, I just stopped watching the news because
me too.
I can't do it anymore.
I can't take it.
I can't. And when I do, I try to think of ways to eliminate the cruelty mm-hmm. without putting myself in jail. So
yeah, I think not kind things when I'm engaged with the news.
And it's just crazy.
And I say terrible things and I behave in a way that I do not want to behave, so I turn it off.
Yes, I stopped doing social media. I stopped watching the news, but I can't be completely uninformed and it seeps in. But kindness matters. You need to be kind to yourself before you can be kind to anybody else.
What does that look like for you?
Well, you have to, for me, it's thinking, being in the moment, being somewhat self-absorbed, being selfish. Mm. I love to do stuff for other people. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love it. I got a gift certificate the other day from a vendor thanking me for doing my job.
Yeah.
And I went out and I bought a whole bunch of stuff for Partners for Peace because I hadn't done that yet. And I thought, I'm going to just turn this money into something for them. And I feel good about that. Yes. I think that's an act of kindness.
Some people would call it a sacrifice too.
I wouldn't.
I know, but some people would.
Well,
anyways, carry on.
I was trying to find somebody at Hannaford or Walmart that needs the gift card that I got for Christmas more than I do.
Me too. I do the same.
And I kind of make their day. And you get a little bump of happiness when you do that. And so if you're not kind to yourself, how would you recognize kindness in others?
Yeah. How? Right. Like if you don't know what water is like, how can you describe it to someone else?
Right.
You're not going to do a very good job, especially if they do know what it tastes like and what it's like, what it behaves like, right?
Right. There's a lot of unkindness when you hear other people's relationships and I watch stuff. I watch people.
You're an observer.
Work. Yeah, I'm constantly sort of observing what's going on. And I think they think that they can do that, but the person that they just did that to or that's going to affect is going to have a real struggle. And it's just unaware. It's just, I don't know, kindness feels to me like a big word and then you kind of break it down. And I might be babbling slightly.
I don't think so. So a lot of people talk about kindness when I ask them this question. And usually people say something like, it's just as easy to be kind as it is to be unkind. Something like that, which I disagree with, but that's a whole other thing. It's a better investment to be kind in the beginning, but I find it to be a lot more work to be kind when I don't want to be kind.
Oh, absolutely. You have to play the game.
Sometimes.
So, you always have to appear to be kind. So, for example...
Professionally speaking, would you say?
Professionally speaking, always appear to be kind. Even when you're not feeling kind, you always have to be diplomatically kind. My predictive indexing has my patience level, my self-perceived patience level is so far on the left, which isn't the good side. And my social so far on the right, it covers the word social.
I love it.
But how I think others perceive me is being incredibly patient. So my true feeling about my patience, because I want to get stuff done. I don't have time for this.
Yes.
There's a lot to get done.
Get out of my way.
Get out of my way. I know what I'm doing. Go away.
Can't everyone just do what I would do?
But if I But I think people perceive me as being much more patient than I am, because that's how you succeed at work, because you don't want to be pushy.
Right.
You don't want to be perceived as impatient. You want to be moderately sociable, but not crazy, so nobody knows what you're doing.
Not too vulnerable, but appropriately
Right.
vulnerable.
So it's very much like that. I'm not always kind. In my head, I can be awful.
Oh, I am often unkind.
I'm not unkind. I
don't think I behave in an unkind way.
I think unkind thoughts.
I think
all the
unkind
time.
thoughts all the time.
All the time.
And I would like to be have a quicker recovery time from being in that space to getting out of the space, which is part of the reason why I do this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough question. These are difficult questions.
They are. I agree.
They don't have set answers.
It's relative.
No.
And we define these words differently. Each of us do. The word sacrifice, the word kindness. We think of these words in different ways. And so part of the reason that I really enjoy talking to people in this way is so that we can build on that with each other. We'll have better discussions when we bump into each other at the grocery store because we have common language. We can talk about this all day, but if I call it a pen and you call it a pencil, we're going to struggle to get any work done because we're not on the same page. Right. And so doing this with each other out loud in this manner kind of does that for some of whoever might come across it. You know,
we have these conversation starter games that we use. And I think I mentioned this with our dearest friends. And we just will go away for a weekend and we take these boxes of things and we sit and we pull a question out. And there's no avoiding the question. Somebody has to answer the question. And because we're a trusted group, we can answer these questions, and we learn so much about each other. We thought we knew everything about each other, and all of a sudden we find out this is how our friend was raised in the family, and this is what his experiences were, and that explains so much today.
It does, right. And we've learned a lot about each other today.
Absolutely.
It's been really fun. I hope you want to do this again with me sometime.
I would be happy to.
Oh, yay.
Send me your questions. I'll be thinking about them.
I'm working on developing a new set of questions. I am headed to Myrtle Beach later this week, and I will be gone for a couple of weeks and speaking at the American College of Healthcare Administrators Conference.
I'm impressed.
I'm very excited.
Very good.
And we're going to be talking about can't we all just get along?
Ooh.
So it'll be some of this, this kind of stuff we'll be talking about too. I thank you so much for coming. You're so generous with your time and sharing with me.
I'm excited.
Me too.
And
thank you, Saban.
Yes.
Producer extraordinaire. We're over here at 54 Wilson Street in Brewer, Maine at Selfie Space Studio. And if you ever have a need or a desire for a space to take pictures or do recordings, or you want to be photographed or recorded, he is the person. If you want to be taught how to photograph and record and work with audio and video, he is the person that you want. So thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.